So you gotta ignite your light and let it shine, 'cause baby, you're a star firework. Come on, show 'em what you're worth. It was a long walk to get there, but I think it's worth it, as today we discuss I Am Not Starfire. How are you guys doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, also I am Dan Rosen, and these are my co-hosts Shaharah Ghaznavi and Matthew Ardell, and this is Detecting the Marvelous.
Woohoo! 10 out of 10. Dan, that was awesome.
Yes.
Tried to work a dad pun into a Katy Perry song and reference I Am Not Starfire at the same time.
It worked. It worked. Your dad credentials are intact. So yeah.
But I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. It was nice to read this as kind of like a palate refresher in a way.
Yeah.
Felt-
We've done some dark, heavier stuff, and so yeah, nice to have something more, fun like this one. Yeah.
Absolutely. And like I love the meaningful, like heavy stuff, and then this is like just totally the other side of that, where it's like kind of cute and romantic and like teeny in a good way. So yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah, it was great. This was a delight.
Yeah. Thanks. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm good. I'm good. I really had a lot of fun with this episode or this comic. Um it was just a lot of it's so pretty. I think it was like colorful and bright and fun, and
Yeah.
yeah, like having like I said, like having been doing a lot of headier stuff lately that was a little more on the grim side. This is like a, a light of joy to shine into the room. Kind of thing.
Yeah. For me, it was a real page turner, and I think I zipped through it in 2 sessions just because I was I was enjoying it, and there's no chapters or issue ends, so I'm just like, well, might as well keep going.
Yeah, it's a very quick read. It's not like a ton of text. It's visually, it's very nice. It's funny. It's meant to just. I feel like and like I feel like it's definitely geared toward like young teenagers. Like I feel like a 13-year-old me would have adored this. Um, it's nice to kind of put myself back into that kind of stuff, like the weird crushes and the coming into
Yeah.
yourself and hating everything that you've been taught to be or meant to be or supposed to be. So I don't know, that definitely resonated for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very relatable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, um, Dan, do you? Oh shit! Sorry.
You're the one who's doing the history today, I think.
Yeah. Right.
I'm tired.
Trying
So,
to
would you guys like to hear a little bit of history about Starfire?
Yeah, for sure.
Oy,
Once
oy,
my
oy, oy,
collective
oy.
brain. Right?
Yeah, pick it up off the floor. Yeah. So this I Am Not Starfire was written by Mariko Tamaki, Toronto-born Jewish Japanese comic creator, and pencils and inks and colors. So like a lot of work being done by Yoshi Yoshitani, with letters by Aditya Bidkar. So the team is an interesting collaboration to bring Starfire to an entire new audience via her daughter. This is part of the DC Young Adult Initiative. That's an attempt to appeal to audiences that may have been alienated by the inaccessibility of mainstream lines. Unfortunately, traditional comic fans were traditional comic fans, review bombing it in many instances. But overall, it landed pretty well with a 3.4 out of 5 on Goodreads and a 7.8 on Comic Book Roundup.
Nice.
It's a character that's traditionally been associated with as a person of color. So having queer Asians, queer people of Asian heritage, telling a story about a queer daughter is a powerful way to share a story, and the format itself kind of leans into a manga style that may appeal to these younger audiences who haven't been as engaged in Western comics. Now, Starfire was created by Marv Wolfman, who we've discussed previously that they actually had to prove was an actual person during the Comic Codes era because werewolves weren't allowed. And George Perez in 1980 as a member of the Teen Titans. On Starfire's design, Perez said, I figured based on the description, it was Red Sonja in outer space. So she ended up having a visual cue from that. When Joe Orlando passed by, he saw the character sketches and suggested maybe her hair should be longer. That I took to the ninth degree and gave her a Mighty Mouse cone trail. So that's where the hair kind of being trailing off behind her
Yeah.
came from.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Now, it's arguably one of the more well-known characters. Not due to her time in Infinite Crisis or 52 or her cheesecakey appearance in Red Hood and the Outlaws. But I would argue a lot of people know her from her time on Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go,
Absolutely.
as well as later Young Justice. I mean, that's where a lot of people learned about her relationship with Dick Grayson, and
Mm.
came to understand her interesting, almost Yoda-like cadence in her speech at times, where she
Right.
mixes around words and has that sort of charming innocence and naivete.
And
Um,
doesn't really use contractions either. Like
yes,
she's
yeah.
always,
So
it is
it's
not. Yeah.
yes. So this is I Am Not Starfire was released in 2021, and it's actually kind of perfect timing because those kids who in 2020 or 2013 would have been watching Teen Titans Go are now young teens exploring their sexuality, and this is a perfect way to land and appeal to this audience who maybe didn't make the jump into mainstream comics, but or mainstream Western comics, but maybe playing in these other spaces and reading these YA novels. Yeah, so it's a bit of history about Starfire and this book in particular.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Matt. I appreciate it. I like
Yeah.
that it kinda came out at in a timely era for those who grew up with Teen Titans Go, which is like such a good show. And
Yeah,
I've been getting
Yeah.
it recently because yeah, it has such a charm to it. Each of the characters, and even like Starfire herself is like a ditzy but still like leader kind of character, and I like that kind of mix of like you can be girly, but you can also be like a very powerful leader, which I love. So
Yeah. What brought you specifically to I Am Not Starfire?
it was actually Sasha Wood, funny enough, because we did like my first episode on this podcast was talking about
Yeah.
Robots of Doom with Sasha Wood. That was like all of us. So
Yeah.
in my research of Sasha, I was watching a ton of her videos, and then I came across her I Am Not Starfire because for some reason it really, like, I don't know if it was the cover art or anything, but I watched her retelling of it, and then I read it myself, and it was something that was very different. It felt very manga-y. It didn't look like a traditional comic book either. Like the graphics are different. It was centered
Mhm.
around kind of an offbeat and queer character. So I definitely wanted to, and then when I read it, it was very, very charming. So I thought I'd bring it to you guys.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Well, yeah. I mean, I thought it was so fun and like super relatable. That like all the awkwardness, like having the crush and like being clumsy in science class, and having yeah, like like the relationship with her friend. I thought was really cool. And I think even just like things like how they portrayed the texting was great
Mhm.
as well. Like one with like all the like shortcuts, misspelled words, like removing random letters in some of the text, so things and how it would just be these little like bloops with the person's like profile pic coming up. Yeah, like I thought it was very like it was, and like even like the angles taken from the shots, like sort of like you characters when someone's like thinking of them or talking to them, yeah, like were very carefully, like very thoughtfully chosen, I thought.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and one of the things too is like I find Yoshi's work is very dynamic and energetic in a very youthful way. Um like I checked out some of their other stuff. I mean she has a great like a great resume, having worked for like DC and Marvel and Disney and like all of these platforms. And but like she's also done like a terror deck that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to pick this up because just the
Ooh.
art is so lush and beautiful. I find it soothing. Like it's just it's so it's like it just feels like you can look at this and it's not like off-putting or jarring. It just flows.
Yeah, I think that I got that completely. Like watching this was actually a delight to my eyes, and even like when we're in Mandy's world, even though it's like completely antithetic. I don't know. It's completely opposite to the world that her mom wanted her to be raised in. It's like black and white. It's still very visually appealing. And
Mm.
Mariko Tamaki's work tends to be like the author tends to be very queer centered and a very femme forward, and um this is kind of really in her wheelhouse as an author and writer.
And I mean, she's also a performance artist here in Toronto.
Mm.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
and so, yeah, it's one of those people where I'm like, I wouldn't be shocked if at some point our social circles overlapped in some way or another,
Yeah, like
kind
now
of
I feel
thing.
like I want to like check out, yeah, like what like next time she's performing at some point. Yeah.
Yeah,
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 'Cause I
absolutely.
thought, yeah, I thought like the way it did like that relationship between Mandy and the popular girl she likes,
Claire.
Chloe,
Claire.
Claire, yeah,
Yeah, and like even like things like how she's like, yeah, my friends are dick, but they're my friends, and it's kind of like, you have people who you hang out with, for years because they're in your class or at your school or you live nearby, and then even like after they get a bit older, and they're still like, oh, he's kind of being shitty, but like, I don't know, those are the people who I hang out with, like that's my crew, kind of thing. Uh, and that I thought was, yeah, very well spotted and well like portrayed. It's and just, yeah, like being, I think, a very relatable, like fun story. I also love the idea of like anytime there's someone who's superhero adjacent but they're not the actual superhero, so following her as just someone who's just like, there's no battle until the end. Before then it's just like regular, like teen stuff, but it all like kind of is building to that, and there's like hints that something's going in that direction at some point, but just, like more just her like, yeah, living her like underlying life of just, yeah, and yeah, which I thought was great. And also like being very counterculture, not being like, oh, you have to like study hard and do that, and like being like, not being like, oh, like, she learns her lessons of like, oh, I guess I'll study to like take the SATs, but it's also like I am also going to like do the things that I want to do to learn about myself as well.
Yeah.
yeah. So, do you want to share the plot with the listeners, Shahara?
Sure thing. Well, we start off the first panel kind of telling us what the story is about. All my life, I've been a kid of a superhero. And we have Mandy dyeing her hair black. She originally has like red ginger hair resembling her mom, and it becomes very clear at the very beginning that Mandy is a character who has always lived in the shadow of her mom, who is Starfire, this famous, gorgeous superhero. And she even calls herself the anti Starfire. She has a bit of an independence in herself, but also rejects everything that she has been growing up. She has a pet. Is this a cockatoo? It's the white one with the yellow hair at the back. A
I
cockatiel.
think so.
Cockatiel? Yeah.
Yeah, she has a
Yeah.
pet cocktail, and it's in her friend circle is mostly comprised of her friend Lincoln, who's also a gay man himself. So like a small tight knit queer friend circle. And as we move through it's very clear that she is very different than those around her. Like Matt said, like her alignments, compared to everyone else her age, are very different. Um, and we understand that she's always felt either different or like people were questioning her if she ever had powers. I heard that she can cry fire, for example. So always kind of being put on a pedestal and looked at as an outcast. So I think that she's at a point where she's embraced that. She's quite goth, quite different, and sooner or later she starts to fall for this popular girl at her school named Claire. So throughout the story, that relationship develops as um, she kind of figures out what she wants to do with her life. Um, and more mischief happens until kind of at the very end, and not to, and I guess we could spoil a little bit, but at the very end I think it's, and let me know if I'm incorrect, but it's Starfire's sister that comes down
Yeah.
saying, hey, Mandy is supposed to be the heir because Starfire, you're not going to be the heir, therefore you have to, and then there's a big battle, and then we realize that Mandy has powers, which is something that I want to talk to you guys about. That's just one plot point. But yeah, that she becomes a bit more popular after that, and people start to recognize her for who she is after she gets powers. Which brings us to the end where she ends up with the girl, which is really really sweet. Um, so that's
Right.
kind of like a really rough plot line of I Am Not Starfire.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you guys
I want to
think? Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, one of the things I found really funny about it, like as a 40-year-old retired goth guy, I don't know if it was Yoshi or Mariko who came up with it, but the skinny poppy shirt is so clearly a reference to Canadian industrial band Skinny Puppy.
Yeah.
Like even down to
Oh,
the
right. I
logo,
didn't know
like
that. I don't.
it's like I'm not sure which of them did it, but it's like that was a choice. That was a choice that I appreciated.
Right. Oh, neat. Oh, that's cool. So it's interesting that you bring out the powers thing because I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, Shahara. Because I was, to be honest, much more invested in her getting with Claire and
Yes,
that than like her getting powers personally. Like I
absolutely.
thought, yeah. So I was mixed feelings because I was like I can see why, and it's great because the same time she comes into her own, but also yeah, like for me she didn't need to have powers necessarily. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. What were your thoughts?
My thoughts are that the whole story has been that like throughout her life she's been compared to her mom, who's like the queen of the superheroes, to say the least. um
Hmm.
and the story felt like she was coming to herself as a person who did not have powers, and to have Claire kind of fall in love with her even without her powers, and her finding the self-confidence within herself. And it seemed like once she got powers, people finally noticed her. And like there's
Yeah.
commentary to be said about like the meanings within that, but part of me felt like this could have been a really good story of her figuring out how to, how to move through her life without her having powers. And I agree, they weren't necessary. I don't think it was like a
Mhm.
bad choice, but it is definitely the one critique of like, well, why did we feel like at the very end she needed to have powers in order for people to finally see her? um
For
what are your
me,
thoughts?
I don't think she needed to have powers, but I think the powers are sort of an allegory for that acceptance of self. Because
Mm,
throughout her
Yeah.
journey, she's hated her mom, she's denied her heritage, and I mean, there's a lot of threads of this that are the immigrant story, like
yeah,
Hmm.
between her and Lincoln, with high expectations from parents. But there's also an element that runs through this about there's the child of celebrity, because
yeah,
it's very much treated like Starfire is not just a superhero but a celebrity in this reality with
yeah,
fans and
Yeah.
stands. Um, so once she released that hate for her mom, that was knowing that her mom did have a hard life and her mom did struggle, and maybe her mom doesn't understand it, but she can empathize with Mandy's experience. Mandy sees her mom on the ground next to death, she embraces not who she is alone, but who she is in this greater community of the people who love her that she's shut out,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
her maybe dad Nightwing and Beast Boy and Cyborg and Raven, and like these are people who do love her and care about her because she's grown up around them, but she's shut them out.
Yeah.
And that's when she finds the power. So, I mean, as it depends on how you address it. Like for me, I'm like it could have gone either way. I think the way they used it is the appropriate way they used it. It's a storytelling tool
Yeah.
as opposed to, oh, she's an alien kid who's got superpowers and she
Absolutely.
kicks butt. So
Yeah.
so yeah, I understand the criticism. I liked it, but I also understand why in another story it would have been an interesting story if she
Yeah.
didn't have that as well.
Yeah.
Now, I will say one thing that was kind of cool is that afterwards, then it shows that even it does show like a show like show up with her like glasses and her hoodie on or whatever to meet for coffee with Claire, and it does cement that her her getting powers becoming like popular or whatever isn't the thing that matters, because then Claire still sees her for her,
Yeah.
and Claire's hanging out with her for her, whereas like other people are like, oh, they're jumping on the next big bandwagon celebrity superhero kind of thing. And so I think there I could see that like where she used it well. So I mean, my choice, yeah, like would have been her to like she gets the girl, but like doesn't get the powers, but sees her mom finally for who she is. But I do think you're right, Matt, like that allegory metaphor, like the timing of her finding her powers in that moment is powerful, and me like so I can see why they chose that. But it was, yeah, one of those things where it's like, ooh, like it would have been just cool to see like and the thing that I just I got the most of was then she just finding herself, and her like her and Claire really connecting in that way.
Yeah. Which is like so cute. And I love like a
Yeah,
underdog popular girl sort of a story, which is so awesome. So yeah,
for
thank you
sure.
very much for sharing your thoughts, because I'm quite flexible with how I feel about it, but definitely something I wanted to kind of break down with you guys. So I appreciate it.
No, yeah, I was glad. It was something that was in my mind, so I'm glad you brought it up. Because then, like, the really, like, sort of almost like powerful moment too is when she's like, just like finding the strength to do it, and then that's like just kissing Claire, like grabbing her face and giving her a kiss, like that being the like, because that's the kind of thing like where in high school or whatever, there's that person you have a crush on and you want to make a move, but you're like, oh no, what do I do? Like, what if it's too much? What if it's not enough? And then you just go ahead, you do it. And then, yes, like, your brazenness or your sort of little courage in that moment is rewarded. And so that I thought was really great.
That's
One of the things I thought was really awesome too was the exploration of anxiety in
mm,
teens.
Mm.
Like she ran out of the SATs not because like her cover of "I'm moving to France and I don't need to do this" it's a cover. The reality is
Yeah.
she had anxiety about pressure, and my I just went to see um, a cousin who I've known since she was an infant graduate from high school. And I mean, I know firsthand, like watching her in that last week of high school, the pressure that kids are under to perform and to excel and even just to pass is incredible. And,
Yeah.
I mean, Shahar, this is much closer for you than it is for, like, say, Dan or myself. Like you're still in
Years ago.
university, and like
absolutely.
I'm not even in this century when I was last in school. Let's just
Oh
put
my
it
god,
this
don't even
way.
say that.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a much more distant memory, but it's still like to have something that resonates on the same level as you as a young adult reading something
Yeah.
is powerful and meaningful. So I thought that was
Yeah,
nice.
because for me, like I just I didn't just finish high school, but I just finished high school, and it was like part of me is happy that that part of my life is over, and like, oh, I could look at this and be like, oh, kids, but this was me, and like the anxiety that I had around really big tests and how much pressure I had on myself to what university and what I was going to do after high school. And like I remember me and my best friend, and I was like sitting in a math exam with my best friend, and I was proud of her that she didn't do what Mandy did and completely just walk out. Um,
Mhm.
it felt, and yeah, as somebody who also just has a lot of anxiety myself, it was very, very, very relatable, almost to a point where it's like it was cringe for a good reason. It was like cringe when you're like, oh, this is gross, but it's gross because it was me, sort of thing. You're
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's like so close to home that you're like, wow, was I this cringe? But cringe in a good way because it's like you're a teen, almost in the way that like turning red is cringe because it's you. It was you.
Right.
You were that age, you know?
For sure. Well, and I think like one of the things that I really liked about it is also it shows the cringy and the tough stuff, like the pressure as you were talking about with SATs and what are you going to do for college and yada yada yada. But then also like the fun parts, like of just being like, oh, like you can skip class, you can go and just like hang out and have coffee. It's not like, oh, I've got like a meeting to get to or whatever else, that that kind of stuff that was really fun about high school where you're just kind of doing you can just do whatever and you go and do this and then you someone comes over to study and then you're watching TV half the time and eating pizza and like like just being like, oh, let's do a story where we're like we're gonna do Ophelia but we're gonna do it this way and like coming up with your own like like kooky fun like sort of angle on the class assignment. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I felt, I was like, this is clearly. I mean, I don't know if Yoshi's also not an American, but like A is Canadian pizza. There's pineapple on it.
Yeah, they're talking about pineapple and pizza.
Yeah, and B, they don't wear their shoes inside. That drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Like there's we have a joke about
Right.
there needs to be like a filter um to like for every American show where it like filters out the shoes in apartments and
Absolutely.
houses, like kind
Do
of
you think
thing.
that that's like a Canadian
Yeah.
So
thing, or is it like an immigrant thing? Because for me, like
both.
obviously it's a Canadian thing. Yeah, right?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
do
It
you
is
Like
a
it,
Canadian
I
thing. Although I know like I think from Japanese people who I know like also like they're very like take your shoes off when you come inside.
Yeah, same with us, and yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I think maybe because of the multicultural nature of Canada, it's much more adapted. Like
Oh, true.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm Mr. Mayonnaise, and I grew up never wearing my shoes in the house. So like it's not just a cultural thing with other people coming to Canada. I don't wear them. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I don't lose my mind if somebody wears their shoes in their house though. So I
Yeah.
think like I'm like it's okay if you can come up. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's just like I always take my shoes off.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, for me, even when people are like, "Oh, like don't worry, you can leave them on." I'm like, "No, like this is my chance to get rid of shoes. I don't want like I wear shoes out of necessity. I'm not like, oh, sweet, like I can put on shoes and go outside. Like yeah, I'm very much take them off. And also, I really want now a Mr. Mayonnaise superhero comic from you.
Yes, Mr. Mayonnaise.
Yeah, Mr. Mayonnaise and Starfire.
Yeah, his power, privilege.
Everyone just listens to him for some reason, and
Uh,
but yeah, no, yeah, it was super fun, and it's like really very relatable. It was great. Like this was a yeah.
and one of the things I thought also I like is Mandy's just like I was a Mandy in a way too, in that like I had unrealistic expectations in high school. Like I was like, I'm gonna be an astronaut. I was a husky child. I would not have passed the athletics test. I had epilepsy. That wasn't
Right.
also gonna. That wasn't gonna happen. I'm not going to space. The only way I'm gonna get into space is if I get crazy rich and pay Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Send your own little
Yeah,
blue penis rocket to the sky.
yeah, exactly. And but like her, like, oh, I'm just gonna move to France, and I'll find love there, and it'll all be okay. It's that it's a realistic unreality that she's manufactured.
Like
It's this
the
kind of
escapism that she's,
fantasy.
yeah,
Yeah,
like escapism fantasy for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And as someone who very much like after high school, like went to Halifax then for 4 years, then went to Denmark for 2 years, and then afterwards I went to England for a few years before eventually running out of visas and coming home. So I definitely relate to that. Like, like, yeah, I don't want to like hang out here. I'm gonna go go across the world and find myself, so to speak. I think that I found very sort of very relatable too.
Yeah. I feel like I'm in that point of my life. Oh no, that's me.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I'm not the one with the fringe play coming out. Like, so you're making a much more productive use of your youth than I did.
I'm,
Yeah, it wasn't until my 30s that I did a fringe play, so
well, I appreciate that. Why, thank you. But yeah, no, I think
yeah.
like the self exploration was so relatable and different avenues to find yourself for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love also the way that like the characters were drawn. Like you could see like not everyone's drawn like perfectly like sort of straight, like with like smooth skin and stuff like that. So
Mm.
it's like, like Lincoln is skinny, but it's not like he's like, skinny, buff, like looking guy. Or he's like a scrawny kid like I was. Like, and then like the way Mandy's drawn, like there were like little touches where you could see kind of like curves in her legs or whatever, and she's got like, like spot like her legs aren't like perfectly smooth
Yeah.
shaven or like,
And she's like freckles all over her arms, which is something I've like never seen
yeah.
reflected in characters in comics before. Like everyone
Yeah.
diversity, like things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like
And
it was a really, like really like great attention to like detail of how
the
a kid
body
looks and moves.
the body positivity too was also really
Absolutely.
Yeah.
wonderful to see. Like, where the dick kids in the school were making fun of her and making cracks better weight, and it treats her as like a beautiful person
Mm.
throughout the story. And then you get the montage in the end with Claire. Also, one point I really enjoyed was when she turned the tables, and I think this is the point where the relationship clicks, is where Claire's friend Deb is
Mhm.
being a dick. She's like
Yeah.
being a racist, or xenophobe, or I don't know
Yeah.
what you would call it, to a half alien. Um,
Yeah.
but then she's like, Mandy's just like, this is where I enter my ascension, and we feast on the souls of our enemies, and just like leans into it and like
Yeah.
plays up the stereotypes, and is basically an fu to Deb. And you see Claire just sort of chuckling at her clique being made fun of. Like, she's on board with them getting burnt, kind of thing. And I think
Yeah.
that's like, yeah, she's a good person. And then later, when Mandy's in trouble, and Darkfire and the other people from her homeworld are attacking her mom and her, Claire's running towards the danger. She's not running away from it,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
just
That
shows
was really
the love
nice.
and affection.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I will say one thing that I really loved is even though like she gets powers and we debated about that, but she didn't choose a new superhero name. She was still going by Mandy. So she was still
Yes.
being herself, and that I think was very good. Like she hadn't
Very
yet
true.
come up with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And her mom says it's like it's a great name. Like she's still like very much on board with that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really, really great point. Absolutely.
Like so I think that like that I thought was just a really great way of doing a great way of doing it to show that she still is like becoming herself and still being like and she's still dyeing her hair, she's still keeping like her same kind of clothing, her dress, and she doesn't do a cape, so she's not doing she doesn't have cape or long flowing hair or anything like that. She's not dressing like a typical like female superhero with like the like heeled boots that are like up to your thighs with like and showing off lots of skin and cleavage or whatever. Like she's kind of still her like gothic comfortable self.
Yeah, she's doing it her way. You very, very true. It's not like she doesn't dress like the way her mom or the sister does at all. It's like Mandy's version of being Mandy. Yeah, you're so right.
Yeah.
At the same time, she's also growing out her black hair and finding a balance too. It's like she doesn't have to
Yeah,
completely reject things to be who she really wants to be. So it's just a
exactly.
good, like, she can find that perfect place.
Yeah.
Well, do we have any last thoughts on I Am Not Starfire?
No, but just yeah, I think they like it clearly. Yeah, like they I think you can. It's another one of those books where you can see the creative team really knew what they were doing putting this together. Like everything is very precise. I felt.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, since it was just Heather's birthday, we still have some wet bread to
Mm.
eat. So I will
Oh
sign off.
yeah, wet bread. I'm like, oh, I wonder what that would taste like.
Well, I'm gonna find out.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Detecting the Marvelous, a Far From Here and ShowbizMonkeys.com co-production. Your producers are Dan Rosen, Matt Erdill, and Shahara Ghaznavi. Music by Glenn Bouchamp and art by Ben Steamroller. Thanks for listening, and remember, true believers, Excelsior!